Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Free Rotation Nation. I am here again with you for another episode that is the part 2 of our Ark of the Covenant story, mystery, treasure, finding, expedition, whatever you want to call it. We're just talking about the Ark. I am joined again with our illustrious leader, Miss Angela.
Hello.
And our legal counsel, Miss Becca.
Don't say anything that'll put you in jail.
Slander, libel, whatever. And we're back again. So if you remember last week we were talking about the Ark of the Covenant. We got into kind of the history of it, how it was built, how the power thereof, how it was literally like designed to be God's voice on earth and to house holy relics, I guess you would call them. And how the last place it is known to have been was the Temple of Solomon. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of the last actual known location of, if it was real, this is the last place it existed. So we have to remember that this time in Jerusalem, there were a lot of different parties vying for dominance, especially religious dominance. So you had Islam, you had Judaism, you had the Christians. You had a lot of other sects that worshipped other gods also putting their tribes together and being like, nope, this is our property now. And there was just a lot of warring going on. And this is pre-Jesus, so BC or BCE, if you want to call it. So it wasn't like the wars we imagine. They're out there with spears and slings and probably trebuchets if they had enough people and catapults, but it's a lot of hand-to-hand fighting. But you needed armies of 20,000, 30,000, 100,000 so you could sack cities and take over. Otherwise, they just lock you outside the walls and you starve to death. Which sucks, but is a real thing that happened a lot back in the day. Like, if you didn't have enough people to overrun whatever you're trying to take, congratulations, you starve.
Yeah.
You're turn around and go home because this ended poorly. So, we have the family of David, which is the family of Solomon, because King Solomon, David was his father. You go back to Moses carrying the ark across the desert, 40 years with the Jews. They wandered until they found the Temple Mount, which is where they built the flat rock of King Solomon's temple, which is now the Islamic dome of the mount. Mm-hmm. So that's the history of it gets kind of back and forth with who controls what constantly back then. So we have the Ark of the Covenant hidden supposedly under the flat rock where they built King Solomon's temple. That was the center of it. It gets raided by the Babylonians. They win the battle, take off all the gold, the treasures, the idols, all that good stuff. They have a list of everything they took that doesn't contain the ark, but it says they took all the holy things. The Babylonians have all of this stuff for a while and then return everything with a complete written list of everything that went back, also not containing the ark. The ark is not at King Solomon's temple as best anybody knows, and it's not with the Babylonians, supposedly. That's not to say that they didn't take it and melt it down and there was just nothing to return, because they had, that's typically when you raided someone else's religious iconography. If it was gold or bejeweled, you would take it back to yours, melt it down, and create it in the visage of your gods.
And remember, we're talking about a lot of gold.
Yeah, this thing
I was going to say, it's a big old box. You're going to be looking at a lot of stuff that was very valuable in and of itself.
Well, that, and it was in the holiest of the holy places of the Jews.
Yeah.
So all of their holy relics would have been there. Golden crosses, golden, I don't know if they had golden menorahs. Everything would have been precious stones. And
it was rumored that added to the ark was the oil of anointing for kings and stuff for that lineage. So whoever had that could anoint a king.
Right.
So we have, that's kind of the last that
it's really mentioned of where it's at.
It's King Solomon.
Yeah.
So we're going to go over some of the theories and the biblical accounts of what happened to the Ark of the Covenant.
Now, this is all within you said this before, I know it was before Jesus, but this is all in the Old Testament. Was there any mention of it in the New Testament or anything to that extent?
So, yes, but not as a location so much. Mm-hmm. It is mentioned in the Revelation of John. He sees it in heaven.
Okay.
When he has his dream of heaven and describes it, the Ark of the Covenant is there.
Okay.
which is one of the theories. Is it went basically God just took it back.
Yeah.
Okay.
It went the way. If you read like the story of Enoch, Enoch didn't die. The end of Enoch's story is Enoch walked with God.
Right.
So he just got taken up.
Yeah, a flaming chariot came down, got him,
Yeah.
and was like, "Get in, bitch.
Well,
We're
it
going
kind of,
places."
and you know, it's kind of an interesting, and I know we'll get into like all that other stuff, but it is a kind of, it is an interesting perspective to that point, is that maybe God was just like, yes, you've created it. I'm taking it back. And that's why the
Yeah, we're not
Babylonians
worthy
didn't
of it.
have,
They
we're not
they
worthy of
lost
it
it.
anymore. The Babylonians don't have it, and that's why they don't have it. And maybe people just forgot about it after
Well,
that.
my thing is, if he did take it back, since it was the voice of God on earth, if the story of Jesus is correct, he became the voice of God on earth.
That's a good point.
So there didn't need to be an actual physical object anymore.
Right, because the Bible even says that Mary is now the new covenant between
Oh.
God
us,
and man.
because
Ooh, that's
she
really
had
interesting.
the voice of God inside of her, so she became the new covenant.
I was going to make a really inappropriate joke, and I'm not, because
But
I don't want to be struck down. It is raining outside.
But I do wonder about that. Like, if the stories of Jesus were true and he came to earth to blah, 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 he was the voice of God on earth. So you no longer needed a physical box
Right.
to be.
So go. It's gone. Bye.
Or he took it back because, again, if you have another outlet for your words, but there's also this thing that is your words plus infinite power, probably take the power away from people
Yeah.
that don't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, it's like
can't wield it properly.
Like when it's like a prototype, like, or like when you know, like, this is such a stupid like meta or like synonym to it, or is like you have a agent in Valorant that's in like PBE, and you realize they're super broken, and you're like, no, we gotta get rid of that, take it back, and then you make something that's a little bit more like
even
playing field, because at least like, yeah, your voice is still here, but you can't like break a city by walking around it. That's pretty interesting. I never thought about that, but that's interesting.
But again, this would have been at least 700 years before Jesus.
Right.
But, I mean, again, you're dealing with an immortal...
I was about to say-
if you believe time is not a construct to immortal beings.
Right.
Like, it just... He's like, oh, I'm also going to send this guy down there so they don't need this anymore. The end.
Right.
Like, and that... For us, it's an eternity, but for immortals, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah,
Nothing.
He had a good lunch, and then he decided to send his son.
Yeah, I mean, that's really...
yeah.
It's just nothing.
Like when you think about the fact that it's 700 years between an earlobe and a shoulder of these people who hold God's throne.
It's a long way.
Yeah. And probably nothing to them. It's nothing to them.
Right.
And God says, 1,000 years is like a day, and vice versa. That means timeless.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter. Again, we think of time as linear, and to us, 1,000 years is a very long time. In the history of even just this rock, literally nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing exciting, nothing cool. It just does. 1,000 years doesn't matter on Earth. at all.
No. I mean, if you put it in perspective, 1,000 years from this day to 1,000 years ago, it was what, the medieval period at that
1100.
1100. You're in the Dark Ages. It's not. If you think about it, it's not a lot of time between then and now.
Yeah, I mean, so if you think of like 1300 CE, it sounds crazy, but Scotland and England existed and were warring with each other already by 1300. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they were all,
And to put in perspective, like, there's been carbon dating, and we're closer to the flood and this time period than we are to the creation of the pyramids.
yeah, it's really insane to think about.
Right.
But 1300, you think of like the Sun King Louis VI or whatever in France, like that's then.
Yeah.
He had all these huge castles built in Versailles. That's the 1300s. It
Yeah.
sounds like it's infinitely long ago. Nothing.
Well, and think about it. I mean, even like talking about like what you say with Scotland and England, we can still see the monuments and the castles and the ruins of that time period today. So it's not like we're sitting here thinking thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. It's nothing if you, in comparison to like if you are like a god being or an omnipotent being, that's blinking and you're there.
Well, that and I mean, so if you figure 3 generations a decade or three generations a century, 30 generations ago,
Yeah.
it's really not that far. And it sounds like it's crazy.
Oh my god, that's like I'm having an existential crisis.
Yeah, but if you think, every 30 years or so is another generation,
Yeah.
that's 30 generations ago.
So
It sounds like it's a lot farther. I met my great grandma. That's 4.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's 1/8
Yeah.
of the entire timeline.
Yeah.
Like it sounds insane, but it's really not.
Yeah.
And again, it's just because for us a year seems like so long.
No,
But-
when you only have a finite amount of time on the earth, that's why everything feels so like it feels long but short at the same time. But yeah, think about like talking about like the earth and stuff. We always say this, I've always said this before. We're just a momentary blip, not even a nanosecond in the universe's existence. So
we're going to go through, other than the Babylonians, we're going to go through some of the more common theories as to what happened to the Ark after King Solomon and the temple thereof. So we have a Bible reference. It says the glory of the Lord left the temple before the Babylonians sacked the structure, which would have been the Temple of Solomon, and that's Ezekiel 8:6 through 10:18. I don't know if that means who was in charge at that point took it out of there because he understood that, hey, they're going to sack the temple. We need to get
it out of here.
Which would have been it would have been more common than you think because, again, these people were warring all the times, and you understood that a loss meant you lose all of your holy relics. Mm-hmm. So if you had the holiest of all holy relics and you understood that the Babylonians were coming, you would probably move it to where...
Yeah, I can't imagine that. Yeah, I can't imagine that if you have something that is so powerful it's the voice of God, you're just going to leave it there for, possible... there's always going to be a fail-safe plan.
You would think.
Yeah.
Again, especially if you... And again, a lot of times sacking these cities it wasn't a random thing. You had foreknowledge because they're coming with 150,000 people on the march. You've heard tale that they're on the way.
Yeah.
Your scouts, your lookouts, they're like, oh, they're 2 weeks out. They're 3 weeks out, whatever. You know they're coming. So you have a heads up. So that's basically the Bible saying it wasn't there when the Babylonians arrived. I don't know if that means it was already taken by God or if he hid it. It just means that it wasn't there, which would explain why the Babylonians never had a record of it.
Mm-hmm. And there's some people who believe that when it says that the voice, like the Spirit of God actually left the ark. We're done.
It just became a thing.
Because it was the end of the Jewish people after that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, just make it something that's inanimate, then the power is gone regardless.
Yeah.
Melt it down, call it a day. And here's the thing: if that is the circumstance behind it, if you're like the Babylonian army and you've heard of this holy relic that's supposed to be the voice of God, imagine opening it and nothing happened.
Right.
And then you're just like, oh, it's a box.
And there's a lot of prophecies around the Temple of Solomon falling and being rebuilt and God returning when the temple's rebuilt.
Right. So that's why I was
I think the third temple.
Yeah. And there's a prophecy that when the ark is found, that's the end of the world. That's it. That's God returning and he's coming back on fire.
Fucked.
Setting things right.
Yeah.
Via his...
Yeah.
Via that view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have the Bible saying that it was gone before the Babylonians arrived. There's a theory that it ended up in Egypt, in Tanis, which is the lost city of Tanis, which is the Raiders of the Lost Ark story. There's a lot of timeline problems with that. With the Pharaoh would have been Shishonk the first. There are some huge timeline problems with that, and also the fact that he never made it over to Jerusalem is also a problem with it ending up in his possession. Probably did not end up... I'm not saying it didn't end up in Egypt somehow. Probably not through that
Probably not that
line.
Story. Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those... It's a lost city, so there could be a lost treasure in it kind of thing.
It's easy to just kind of plug and chug and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not that. The storyline, the timeline just is so bad for that to be right.
That's the same thing with the second Maccabees where they say they took it and put it in this Dead Sea cave.
Area, yeah.
The timeline doesn't add up.
The third thing is maybe the King Solomon's priests destroyed it to keep the Babylonians from getting it. So the idea is that after the Babylonian king Manasseh took over, faithful priests to Jehovah or Yahweh or whatever you want, Adonai, whatever you want to call him, destroyed it so that he couldn't have it. I can't imagine priests destroying
Not
A
the
holy
voice of-
relic?
Yeah.
Especially
Not
since
unless
you're-
God told you to.
and they're not allowed to touch it. So
Yeah. I was just thinking about how are you going to destroy it?
Yeah.
Well, isn't it like basically we talked about essentially a lead curtain around it, and if you opened it, you just die.
There's a
Yeah.
veil
There's a
around
veil.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I know we were talking. I know it's not a lead, but wait, essentially,
there's
it's
a
like
veil.
radiation just sitting there, like you just die.
So another story is that, and this is a Jewish tradition, that Jeremiah took the ark and hid it on Mount Nebo. Possible, but also highly unlikely, because again, you have to remember the ark had to move with people. You had to have at least four people
Yeah, you had to
carrying
have
it.
several people carrying it.
Again, highly
And
unlikely.
it's striking people dead who aren't worthy of it.
Yep.
Like, not you, motherfucker.
Not looking directly on it, not touching it, not opening it.
Yeah, suddenly he has telekinetic powers and he's just bouncing it up the mountain.
Yeah.
And again, it's just there are a lot of these stories are this thing is gone. Where did they hide it?
Right.
So, and I do wonder how many of these are people sitting around a campfire or just around with their families discussing what could have happened.
Or just false information, red flags getting sent out here. False flag here. So that you,
Well, yeah, especially back then, everything that wasn't seen with your own eyes
yeah.
was just a story. Like,
Yeah.
you have to think there is written language. There are very few people who can read or write it. They're mostly only priests.
Oh, yeah. This is all just a game of telephone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
Well,
guess
we've
what?
always- and I mean,
guess
we've
what I
talked-
heard over
well,
there
we've
in
always
Egypt?
talked about like the reason, really, a lot of Christianity has persisted is because they had people who
Absolutely.
wrote the word down and wrote that and made it something that could be carried and passed through. A lot of pagan religions, it was all oral traditions that were passed down, and it's really hard to keep that history
Straight.
alive and straight if there's nothing for you to call upon if everybody's dead.
You know, I was reading about this, like wondering why no writings at all? Even the people who were educated and could write. And it's because if you write something down, it has the tendency to become a law and steadfast. Right. And a lot of the pagans, they don't want it to be, it shouldn't be ruled.
Right. It's a tradition that you adopt,
Yeah.
but it could change at any point.
You tell your oral histories, but you don't want to write it down.
Same with the Native American traditions and stuff like that. It was all passed down orally. And I know that was a lot of reading and writing, but there were scribes. But a lot, you didn't want to give that power to one person or
to
a
be
group
able
of
to
people.
rule people with it.
Right. And then
to create religion.
Right.
Spiritual anarchy, let's go.
So talking about Maccabees, was it hidden by the Dead Sea? The first and second, or second Maccabees or whatever, it would have been King Josiah that hid it. In a cave near the Dead Sea, where they have found the Gnostic Gospels. If you've read on the Dead Sea Scrolls that the original Gnostic Christians wrote, that predate a lot of the. I will say they predate a lot of the translations for what the New King James Version or the New International Version Bible uses. I'm not going to say they predate the Bible itself, because some of the stories are older than the Gnostic writings themselves. You're talking 1 to 200 CE, but they predate a lot of the 4 and 5 and 6th century things that we're using to base the common Bibles off of.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm just saying when they say that the Gnostic Bibles or the Gnostic writings predate the Bible, they mean what they're actually saying is the completed Bible as it stands with its Gospels and New Testament and Old Testament, not the individual writings themselves. Which is fine. Like, again, these would have been basically books of the Bible themselves as standalones had they been incorporated. But a lot of them are the stories just from a different viewpoint. They're not right or wrong, I guess. It's just different. They're not, I don't think they count as part of the common Christian hierarchy of the Bible stories. But again, there are 96, 97 other books of the Bible that aren't included. You look at the book of Enoch that isn't in the common Bible. The Apocrypha, which was in King James versions until the 1800s and is no longer included. Like, stories get changed. The Bible is a
version.
It is. It's a living history book that we use to base rules and regulations off of. But again, we have to, if you believe in the Bible, you have to make concessions. It says this, it means this. If it says this, then I have to do this. It's not, as a Christian, you don't, again, nowadays, you don't not eat pork or shrimp because the old school rules say so. You don't not wear clothing made out of more than one fiber because the old school, it's all
relative to the time
there's
you're
leeway.
living.
And historically, those rules may have made sense. Nowadays, probably not so much. Like, if I can't wear a cotton poly blend, I don't know what I'm doing with my life.
Well, and everything is
Right.
pretty much cotton poly as it is right now. You're just going to be
Yeah.
naked all the time.
And even Jesus said he came and broke all the old rules.
Yeah.
He only had like the the golden rule.
I always consider the Bible kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons book. Here's some rules, but it's always up to you to how you want to interpret it and exercise it in your life.
And I think that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to
Right.
be,
We're role playing humans.
and it helps you interpret, especially the rules for living and being
Yeah.
in a society. It's like, here are the rules
Yeah.
if you're going to live around other human beings.
Yeah, a lot of it was just like a Hammurabi's code, and they're like, "Hey,
Oh, yeah.
if you kill somebody, we're cutting your hand off and putting you out, and then you're going to die.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
if you
so-
steal, we're gonna do this."
And a lot of the old school rules, like no eating pork. Like,
Oh, it's because pork was dirty. Like eating a pig was dirty.
It's
Well,
hard to get fire hot enough to cook it back then
Right.
too. I'm
not
sure.
only that, so I look at things, and the way my brain works, I look at it historically. A1, they're in the Middle East. Pig droppings are going to be a huge source of fertilizer for you to grow actual things. A2, like she said, it's hard to cook pig over an open fire without a thermometer or enclosure and get it all the way through. And trick was probably a bad thing. If you
Yeah.
ate raw pork back then, you're liable to die. Nowadays, you can eat raw pork and probably be fine, but we have health standards in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same with shrimp. I mean, you have to cook shrimp a certain way, and especially where they were at.
Even now, if you eat bad shrimp, you'll get
Yeah,
violently
you will
ill.
get
Yeah.
And we know what we're doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's rules, and they just make sense. Just because the rule doesn't explain why, it doesn't necessarily mean it's something that you have to follow to a T.
Well, so even when you look at the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill. Yeah, probably don't go around killing people because it leads to not a good society.
Yeah.
Thou shalt not cover thy neighbor's wife. Yeah, if you start
That leads to
murder.
murder. Yeah.
It just causes bad problems. Honor your father and mother. Yeah, listen to your parents because they have experience and they know what they're saying. I'm not saying your parents are angels. I'm saying as a general rule in society,
Yeah.
yeah.
overall the norm is most people have decent parents. Probably listen to them because they're probably trying to make sure you don't get murdered or
fucked
kill
up,
yourself.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of these are rules to survive and be a better human being. Interpret them however you want. I don't really care. I just think that's what it was. I think that's what the Bible is for.
Yeah.
I think it's to make us as a society congeal
better.
and survive versus trying to fight each other and murder each other. It's all dumb. Like, you just don't
yeah.
get anywhere.
And what leads to this jealousy?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
disrespecting
yeah. Well, I was
people.
about to say it's also a moral code, but it's a comfort for people, especially people who are grieving or people who have you know things that or depression or anything like that. I've always said religion, if you have it and you treat it in a positive manner and it's something that helps you through the worst times, that's a great thing to have.
Absolutely.
So there's nothing wrong with that. It's when you use it against other people that it's
Yes.
a problem.
Again, I tell everybody, like, my belief is mine. What I believe is it's what I believe. I don't push it on anybody, and I don't expect anybody to believe what I believe. Believe whatever you want to believe, as long as you're not hurting anybody or
Yeah.
trying to make them follow you because you want them to. I don't care. Like, I just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Just don't forget to love each other.
Yeah, that's the big thing, especially if you read the Bible and you believe in Jesus. Almost everything he said is love your neighbor and love your enemy like you love yourself.
Yeah.
If there's more of that, there's way less drama and fighting and murder and death. Just love everybody. And if everybody did, it'd be super chill.
That's why I don't care when people are like, you know, I believe in Jesus. That's not. I mean, he's a good guy, and maybe he is God's son. I don't care, but he has a good message. Let's listen to it.
Yeah, why don't we actually just pay attention to what he said?
I'm amused.
It's not that I don't believe in Yahweh and Jesus. I just believe there's a lot more of them.
And that's the thing. Like, you just whatever makes you a good person and B brings you comfort in times of hardship. Go for it. If that's reading the Bible, that's
Right.
great. If it's I don't freaking
Because
know.
even the Bible and the words of God never dismissed that other gods didn't exist. It
Right.
said just don't put them ahead of me.
right,
Like, I'm number one, motherfucker.
yeah,
Well, that
I'm the
was-
OG.
We can get into the
Yeah.
whole
What fake
original
gods
God
mean.
Adonai
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
the female version that went with him and where they came from and the
Oh, that's the other
Jehovah
thing
and
that
all
said to be in the ark is a stone image of Yahweh and Asherah, the father and the mother.
Adonai.
As said, yeah. So it's interesting.
I do.
But this
is
current
just
Bible,
FYI, guys, we are a secular podcast, but sometimes, we just got to talk it out.
We're specifically discussing a biblical object
Yes.
today.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
don't feel like we're like proselytizing.
And I say
No,
we're discussing
not
a
at all.
biblical. This object exists in the Torah. It exists in the Quran. This was supposedly one of the old school artifacts that existed. Again, I don't know. I've never seen it, never touched it, never went hunting for it. Don't know if it's real or not. We're just discussing what it would be.
Yeah.
what I'm saying is if you base your religion off of this current Bible, then you're an idiot. I will say that. I don't give a shit. Like, go back and read the originals that mentioned the mother and read the Book of Mary.
Yeah.
You just read them all. At least get a
Yes,
rounded
well, I was
understanding.
going to say, have an educated decision and then take it what
Then
you need
read
to.
about Tiamat. Because I'm going to come back to Tiamat and all of this.
So, Chris, where other places are we talking about that the ark could be existing at?
So we talked about King Josiah. So Orthodox Jews believe that it's hidden in a cave in the Holy of Holies, or underneath the Holy of Holies. In 81, there was a rabbi. His name was Yehuda Getz. He led an excavation that said he came within 40 yards of the Ark of the Covenant, but the Arabian people that are in charge of the mount right now got upset with him digging underneath the Holy of Holies. There's no proof of that. There's no proof that, and I don't know how he would know how close he was to it during an excavation.
You just like hear it humming or something?
I don't.
Yeah.
I look at that, especially the ones where, I got close to it, but I never actually saw it.
Yeah.
To me, that is more like
That sounds like the slot machine. I was almost there.
the Joseph Smith Mormon golden
No,
tablets.
yeah.
They're hidden in this mountain, but no one can ever see them. Also, I've never seen them. Like,
Yeah.
they're probably not there. You probably just gated
Yeah.
a hole.
Really does remind me of the, people in the slot machine. One more time and I'll get it.
Yeah.
I know I was 2 spins away. And then it becomes he was 2 spins away.
Yeah.
Like, that's fact. Because he's had it. He felt it.
Yeah, those are always to me like, how would you know you were 40 yards away? Unless you could physically see it, and at that point you retrieve it.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's standing between you and something that close.
No. Especially angry people, angry clergy.
Yeah.
You can eat a bag of dicks. I'm going to get
Yeah, I'm
this,
gonna
and we'll
kick you
deal
in
with
your
this
shin,
after this.
punch you in the nose, and keep going.
My thing is, if you really saw the Ark of the Covenant and it's underneath a church that is a religion different from yours, there is an honest-to-God real holy war about to occur.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And people would have known about this all the way around.
Yes, the world.
Yeah, the world.
They would have
People
risen up
gone
at that time and
absolutely.
went to get it.
We'd have had another religious war
That's what I'm
on our
saying.
hands.
There's an actual honest-to-God holy war at that point because you're not keeping us from our
Holy relic.
heritage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was given to us by the God Almighty. You will not stop me from getting it.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I will kill everything in front of me to get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what that is. So I just can't, that one I don't fathom.
Yeah.
So.
That really does sound like I had a feeling we were 40 more yards, we would have had it.
Yeah, like what?
And
How
then
do
it
you
just
know?
becomes they were 40 yards away.
Yeah, did you have LiDAR? Did you have ground penetrating radar
Yeah,
that
I was
showed
just thinking
it?
that.
Like,
Yeah.
what is this number you've like?
You
I
could
just,
hear God talking to you saying you're 40 yards away, keep digging.
40 yards.
so even if that's the case, are you ever going to stop?
No.
There you go.
I don't know. Something whispered to me out of the bullshit dark. I might be like, you know what? This isn't for me.
You know what? If I'm down there looking for some sort of relic and I hear a voice out of nowhere that says you're 20 yards away, don't stop. I'm not stopping.
I'd be like, from death or
Nope,
can
you,
we classify?
Can you detail exactly what
Yeah,
you're
what
talking
20
about?
yards?
I'll deal with that in 20 yards.
Yeah.
We're gonna go
See,
those 20 yards
that's
come
why
hell
we're
or high
different.
water.
Especially if you know it's supposed to be the voice
Yeah.
of God and you're hearing a voice talk
Well, this
to
this
you.
is why even on our ghost hunts we're very different because you and Chris are like, we should probably go see it. I'm like, what's 20 yards? I'm just gonna go back and wait in the car.
Again, I want proof. That's my thing. Is I want physical, tangible.
I want to
proof.
be able to see it. I want to be able to say I saw it, and that even if you don't believe me, I know what I saw.
I don't need to see it. I just need to know the truth of it.
This
but
is
I
how
don't-
me and Chris are the two that get
This-
murdered.
so
though.
Yeah,
this
this
is
is
why-
how you guys get blinded.
You say that, but this is why I actually enjoy metal detecting and like hunting for things. I like
Oh no,
touching
that's,
it.
Yeah.
Like I need to know
Seeing
that
it.
this thing is here. So you couldn't stop me. And again, if he was within 40 yards of it, I think at that point you have another holy war for the Ark of the Covenant. I just can't imagine a situation where that doesn't occur.
Yeah.
So, that one I kind of put to the side, is especially since there had already been an excavation like we talked about last week underneath it.
Yeah.
And he didn't find anything. He just, snuck in and paid the Ottoman mayor a bunch of money to let him in there so he could do it. And then they got all upset because you shouldn't be doing this at all. Like digging through our church. Imagine you go to church regularly and it's like the center of your life. And you go in there and some jackass in there with a jackhammer, like,
Hey!
going ham under the altar.
Especially if you're there that late at night, they're probably really down, needing some guidance. And it's like, oh my God.
You're going to get irate.
Yeah, white devil.
Pretty much. So then we get to the story that a lot of people know is that it is in a church in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
I personally also don't believe this to be true.
No, there's no way.
Again, supposedly the Ark of the Covenant is hidden at a church in Ethiopia, or not hidden, but it is at a church in Ethiopia. A priest is allowed to see it once a year. I don't know.
I don't buy it because it's Ethiopia, and I'm sorry to say this, easily overrun and take their shit.
So
it's not like they have, nuclear weapons to guard it. Or
no, here's what I'll tell you.
There's no repercussions for stealing from them.
Right.
The British have learned that pretty well. They pretty much took everything they wanted. Anyhoozle, there are Ethiopian Jews, which for a while was confusing. And then there were old accounts. Basically, the story is the Queen of Sheba, which was Ethiopia, went and met King Solomon back in the day. He wooed her, or one way or the other, they had sex, and she got pregnant.
Had the good times.
They had a child. She
went back. She went back to Ethiopia. He stayed in Jerusalem. The child's name was I can't remember.
Melanitis the First, King Melanitis.
His name had melanin in it, and he's Ethiopian.
Metalinus. It's something like that. It's either Melanitis or Metalinus. It's one of the two.
You thought of
I
melanin.
know. I literally just, my brain hit the AOL dial-up noise, and that was.
It's one of the two, and I'm not that far off. I know it sounds crazy, but I wonder,
No, it's just great if his name is Melanitis.
Well, I wonder if that's
has
where
a
they
lot
not.
of melanin.
If that's not where they
got the word melanin from.
Yeah.
Could be. Like, it literally could be.
Word of origin.
Oh, man.
His name is Menelik the First.
Menelik.
Much better.
Sorta.
I mean, he's licking minerals, so.
Menelik. So, the Queen of Sheba, sent her son, as you would if your father was King Solomon, back to Jerusalem to learn and hang out. King Solomon, of course, wanted his son to stay and rule because it's his direct heir. But his son wanted to go back to Ethiopia and put things right. So the story is King Solomon gave him and put him in charge of the Ark of the Covenant to go back and help with the Ethiopians. Don't know if this is true or not. There's a church in Ethiopia that says they have the Ark. There are a lot of that same sect of that church. They all have like a copy of the Ark inside of them. But this is the one that supposedly houses the actual Ark. I imagine that's not true, because if it was true, people would have already broken in and
just taken it.
Yeah. And again, it's Ethiopia. There's not really much going to stop you. So, I don't think it's actually at this church. It's the one story that a lot of people have heard that, well, we have the Ark, but no one can ever see it. Like, it's real convincing, guys.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's, and even with the Ethiopian Jews, if you question that, if you believe that the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon had a baby, that's your lineage of the Ethiopian Jews right there.
Yeah.
As soon as that kid as soon as King Menelik gets married, has children of his own, there's a line of Judaism in Ethiopia. That's it. It's super simple.
Yeah.
The Romans, so they invaded the temple in 70 A.D. There was no sign of the Ark, but again, it had been gone for 700 years by this point. Who
knows where it's actually at?
Yeah.
And again, we also have, after first temple was destroyed, you had the Poor Knights of Christ, which is the Knights Templar, go hang out there, say they were there to help the wayward pilgrims, and instead they're doing a lot of archaeology, a lot of digging.
Yeah, a lot of it.
They said they never found anything left and suddenly were really, really wealthy.
Oh, yeah.
So they found something. No one's sure what it was. It may have just been a hoard of gold. But they definitely found something. And I'm not saying it wasn't the Ark. I'm not saying it is. I don't know. I know the Knights Templar became really, really powerful to the point of where the King of France on Friday the 13th tried to have them all murdered.
Yeah.
Because they were so powerful. And the story is he owed them a bunch of, I won't say money, but he owed them something that was very valuable, and he did not want to pay up. I don't know if it was money, I don't know if it was favors or whatever, but that's where we get Friday the 13th or Black Friday being a bad day. It was the day he ordered all the Knights Templar to be murdered. It didn't work. Some of them heard about it and took off. Supposedly to Scotland, which is where you got the Freemasons, supposedly. The Freemasons, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how much of that is actually true.
Right, and you're just kind of guesstimating that the thing that made them rich is the Ark of the Covenant.
We know it was something.
Yeah,
we don't know if it was knowledge or gold or they found some old
relic of that maybe was
something.
Yeah.
But they found something that made them almost untouchable except by a king.
Right.
So that would be, if I had to guess, that's probably the more likely story for me, is that a bunch of sword-wielding jackasses that believed they were doing God's work found it and then became so powerful that they couldn't be stopped. Again, I don't know if
I think that'd be the cooler story, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah.
I like the cooler story if it's still being hidden. Because if the Knights Templar took it, they know where it's at.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's hidden for sure in the vaults of the Vatican. That's also another theory.
Yeah.
Because the Vatican took it ages ago.
So my problem with that is I can't imagine the Vatican not using it or putting it on display. As much controversy and hell as the Catholic Church has been through in the past 30 years, I can't imagine them not whipping it out and being like,
but it's
we
not
believe
theirs.
in the one true God.
But it's not theirs.
Again, not theirs doesn't mean they can't use it.
I'm pretty sure that like the Jewish people would be like, "Hey, that's ours. You got to give it back, man."
How are they going to? I mean, again, how are they going to get it from the Vatican? The Vatican is basically just a military fortress.
Yeah.
They're not getting it, so
Probably go to the World Court or something. Sue.
even then,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see a legit way that, and even then, like what? I'm not sure the Jewish people have a hierarchy set up the way the Catholics do. I don't think there are bishops and archbishops, and I don't think there's that sort of, and it sounds crazy, but military hierarchy in place with Judaism. There's probably higher up priests that people know about, but I don't think they have it set up that way. And again, the Vatican is, and people don't think about it, it is a military fort.
It is. It has its own standing army, separate from anybody.
Its own city.
It has
technically.
pikemen.
Yeah.
The Vatican has pikemen still. Like,
Yeah.
you're not, again,
So six called.
you're not taking it. So, and these are really well-trained, like, insanely talented murderers.
I mean, but on the same side, like, I mean, as mysterious as, I hate to say this, it sounds so stupid. I feel like the Vatican and the Catholic Church has its own mysteries that they wouldn't want people to know about.
So,
And I mean, maybe, but I don't know. It's like one of those things where I'm like, I totally get where you're coming from with it, but at the same time, I can kind of see where they're like, we're not going to let anybody know this because this is a power we're going to use as a failsafe.
my problem is I don't think they need a failsafe. I think the Vatican Church is always vying for control of everything. And if they had that sort of power, I can't imagine them not using it, not wielding it, to be like, we were right and everyone else is wrong. I just can't see them not
We
doing
know
that.
this because the voice of God told us from this ark right
yeah,
here.
we have the Ark of the Covenant and the Ten Commandments.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine them not doing that.
I think I just like the story that it just became a box.
Oh, no, no, Becky. There's a better one that you're going to like better.
Okay.
So the United States is rumored to have a state that has...
What?
Yeah. Yeah,
Are you about to fuck
Arkansas.
with me?
No, I'm not fucking with you. In a town called Ark. Named after the Ark of the Covenant that's buried there.
Do you
I
drive
wish.
by it on the
Is it
highway?
Arkansas or Arizona?
I
It's
think
Arkansas.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. So I don't lend any credence to that.
No, it's ridiculous.
Not because I don't say that whatever relic from whenever can't be in America, but the story itself is just so damn
It's
stupid.
just now. If they
Yeah.
said it's in Oak Island, it is what's buried at the bottom of all the man-made constructs and booby traps going down. Maybe I could get behind that because something's down there.
You know what's buried in Oak Island? And this is someone who does a lot of metal detecting and treasure hunting?
Nothing.
Nothing. There's nothing there. These people are jackasses. There are more treasures to look for. Move on. Every time they find a square nail, and they're like, this came off of a ship. I'm like, that came off of a door.
Yeah.
I try to watch those shows and see these people, and it just
They
irks
never-
the shit out. They don't find anything.
Ever. And then they're like, we found these waterways, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, it's an island.
There are definitely waterways
Yeah.
under it. However, yeah, the Oak Island people just piss me off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
They
don't
never
feel
find
like
that goddamn thing. They haven't even found one piece of bullion.
No, nothing.
Like, go away at this point.
Yeah, I don't feel like Nick Cage would be the one to find the Ark of the Covenant in the United States. That's what I picture when you talk about
Yeah.
the it
Oh,
being in like
Yeah, it's
Midwest.
amazing.
It's in Mount Rushmore
I gotta
somewhere.
go see if it's...
it's right next
Arizona.
to the Constitution.
Which-
because America.
You know what? Okay, conspiracy theory. Because do you know what? The Mount Rushmore was a sacred place to the Native Americans because
The
it was
Black
the
Hills.
mount.
Yeah.
Now I kind of believe Mount Rushmore over the. I'm sorry. I'm just looking to see if it's Arkansas or Arizona.
So my question is, what thing that wasn't flat
Arkansas,
round wasn't sacred to the Native Americans?
Yeah.
Every stick, every rock, every tree, every mountain, everything. Like, am I in saying that it was sacred to Native Americans? Yeah. So was the air. Like, that doesn't mean anything. It's a nice convenience that it was
Yeah.
sacred, but however, so is every creek.
I think anything that has a mysticism to it, it's going to lead credence to some sort of crazy theory about
Yeah, of course.
something else that's...
If you told me it was buried in the Snake Mount in, Ohio,
Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They hit it with natives. If you told me it was at the pyramid that's in Tennessee that's under the lake, I'd be like, yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
But if you tell me it's buried in Ark, Iowa, well, you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Arkansas.
You can drive
like
by
you
full
even.
tourist traps and go
And
see
the
the
thing
Ark
is,
of the Covenant.
There's not even a good story.
Yeah, it just
No.
was there.
It's just somebody said it's here. There's really no story to it.
It's lame.
Yeah, if you tell me, hey, it's like, so they found the Viking tablet out in like Wyoming.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's
Okay,
cool.
that makes sense.
That is a physical thing I can see, and yeah, it's way outside where it should be, but
Or like the Viking
travel.
ship they found in Lake Michigan.
Yeah,
Deal. It's
We-
there.
well, that we know that Eric the Red was in Canada.
Yeah.
Makes sense that they were exploring.
But
Yeah.
all that shows is like the Viking tablet is that they went a lot farther than we thought they did.
We have no idea how far they went.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just it gives you another theory about what we think we know.
They
which
didn't
isn't
stop
there.
at Prince Edward Island.
Right.
Got it. Cool.
Got it.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like when you say like, oh, we're in Spear of Destiny Tucson, I'm like, you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah. 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 No, I get it. That's probably my favorite and least favorite at the same time. It's here in Arkansas.
No.
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
So stupid.
Kansas.
Yeah. Yeah.
The town that dreaded sundown.
I'm sorry. It's been here the whole time.
And again,
Surprise.
I'm not saying it can't be here if it exists. I'm saying it's not in Ark wherever the fuck. They definitely didn't name a city after it and put a big neon sign that says, here it is.
After they spent, even the Jews kind of, other than when it marched before them, it's given its own home and kept safe. But it's here, big, like the Beetlejuice arrow
There's
point.
a nice,
Yeah.
there's a nice barbecue pit right next door that you can go see it after you get all
Yeah.
you can eat.
And I'm not saying if
It's
you,
like rooftop goats beside
you-
it.
Yes.
yeah, if you live in whatever town it's supposed to be and you're a bad person, but you should move.
Yeah.
Because that town's
Who
bullshit.
the fuck want to live in a place called Arkansas?
Anyway,
Arkansas.
doubt it's there. Not saying it's not.
Yeah.
And again, I would be more apt to believe if it is, if someone has it, it's in a private collection somewhere.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine the person
I think it's lost. I think it's just lost, and then nobody knows where it is.
I think they know where it's at. I think it's protected.
I don't know. I just feel like with that kind of power, whoever wields it would
But
totally use it.
I don't think they're allowed to wield it. I think that's part of it. I think if it is known, its location is known, the people who guard it understand what it is and it's why it's protected and not brought out.
Yeah. I kind of like the idea that God just took his voice away.
Yep,
Was
that's
like,
the last one.
We're
is-
getting the silent treatment.
Yeah. He's just gone. He gone. We're
I'm
not
fine.
worthy anymore. The Jews are not in power
He just
anymore.
says it's fine and
But
then
yeah,
leaves.
It's the last one is is taken up to heaven.
Yeah.
John saw it in Revelations. It's 11:19. He saw it up there, and it doesn't know. Again, we don't know if it was a metaphor for the covenant between God and man, or if it was the actual physical ark itself. Because a lot of what John saw was and wrote about was allegory, so we don't know.
Right.
But he wrote about seeing it in heaven, and again, it may have been a huge part of the oral history and God being on earth that was part of it. Like he needed that to be there to complete the story. I don't know. I just know he wrote that he saw it in heaven. So I don't know if it was the physical real one or just an
Metaphor
idea.
for it, yeah. I think it's one of those things that like it's so out there because like you don't think of these like holy relics when you think of the Bible. But then you get into this and you're like, oh, this is like super awesome.
So
And it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, we live with the pyramids of Giza and the Sphinx.
yes, we know
Like,
these things existed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again,
And they're
we can't build them today.
yeah. We still don't know really what's under the Sphinx. We know there's enormous rooms, but what's under there?
Again, there are a lot of theories on how they built the pyramids, and they say they used a ramp and sand and water, which is a cool idea for like 6 to 10 blocks, but not 2.5 million.
Yeah.
When you get to the building up the top part of the pyramid, you have a ramp that's 67 miles long,
Yeah.
because the incline can only be so slight, or you can't move those
Yeah.
100-ton rocks
Right.
at all.
You're still in the same position you were in the
Yeah,
first place.
it's just-
yeah.
But
Again,
it's a lost knowledge.
And then the weather patterns on the Sphinx, you can clearly see he was surrounded by water. He like sat in the middle of water.
yeah.
again,
Oh, and think about all the underground temples that, after the tsunami hit and all the water receded back, because, after a big wave, there's a big reset. And it uncovered all these temples and statues that we had no idea. One day we're going to find the Library of Alexandria under the water. And,
Yeah.
so I think it burned, so I don't think we're going to find it. I think it's just gone.
oh,
And again, the library, it wasn't lost, it burned down. Like,
yeah.
it sucks, but that knowledge is just...
And there may have been something in there. We don't know.
Again, there was probably... And we look at, even with building the pyramids, we try to figure out how they did it, and there's a lot of theories. None of them really play out real well. Again, they play out on small scale. You can build a 6-block pyramid as long as the blocks aren't too heavy, and you can use
Yeah.
a sand ramp. You can carve them with copper as long as they're not too big, but you can't... It's really difficult to carve 500,000 blocks that are going on one side of this pyramid
Yeah.
without messing them up a half inch all the way to the top,
Yeah.
so the whole thing
Right.
leans. Like,
Right.
I'm not saying it's not possible. It's just really, really difficult, and it doesn't make
Well, and the
sense.
fact that it circles the world in a perfect line, and to the point that they're under the water, the
Well, I was
oceans.
going to say, and even on top of that, looking at the fact that they were able to build it based on where star alignments and stuff like that was before even astronomy was a real thing. Like
Yeah.
things that, like what we see as astronomy for today.
So the thing is, like, I think about that too. I don't think it wasn't a real thing. I think their understanding of how the cosmos moved and how we moved within it is very, very different.
Yeah.
I think they looked at the stars a lot more than we do,
Oh, absolutely.
and I think
and they could see them.
and I think they understood the movement therein a lot better than we do.
No, I agree with that. And what I'm saying is, it just feels like that what their knowledge was so much more advanced than what we had on like the Western or the European.
I think it was just different.
Yeah.
And again, when you look at, so there's this theory, that they found Atlantis.
Right.
Don't know if it's true or not, but it's in the middle of the Sahara. It's called the Eye of the Sahara.
Mm-hmm.
Everything matches Plato's description, which Plato got from his grandfather or great great grandfather, which he got from Egypt, where the Egyptians say they were descended from the people that left. They don't say Atlantis, but they describe it.
Right.
The city with 3 rings, 2 of water, 3 of land, whatever. So, like, there's an ancient knowledge that we don't have. And I'm not saying we don't know things that they don't know, or it's just a different knowledge that we
Right.
don't have. We don't.
Well, we've talked about this before. Like, what happens when like what our modern world is wiped out, considering our books, our history, anything like that, and you have to start over. Everything is going to be different unless there's something that tags it back. So that's my thing. I totally get where it's all coming from at that point. It's just, it's crazy to think that because we have such a uniform idea of how we think things have gone. But when you look at it, what we have is what people have written down, what we have learned throughout the years in our modern history. I mean, it's just, what we have is what we have, and that's really it.
Well, you look at like North America, and the oldest things we can find here are from the Clovis people,
Right.
supposedly. However, if you dig down beyond the Clovis age, which nobody really does, but a couple people have, you start finding more artifacts again.
Yeah.
So there's a pre-Clovis that doesn't really have a name.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we're not sure, even in America, how long people were here. We call, Native Americans indigenous, but again, we don't know that.
Right.
We know they were here before the Europeans, but
that's because we have a written history that puts us
Right,
there when
because they have a history that explains them coming from north,
Right.
walking the peninsula down.
well, when you look at when the conquistadors landed and the natives there already had a tradition of blonde, blue-eyed people showing up in ships. And
That's why they welcomed them.
Yeah, this was supposedly the first time that any European had been there, but they already had a tradition of it.
Yeah.
They didn't expect it to actually occur because they were just stories. But we don't know that 7,000 years before that, there wasn't a trade route through there.
Right.
And they
we just
probably
don't
had
know.
stories about how the reason they weren't so suspicious is because the stories didn't mention they were
Right.
warlike.
Well, they may not have been. That's the thing, is you're dealing with a different kind of people.
Yeah.
From
And then the conquistadors get here and they're awful. Well, it's like they said that the one who was looking for El Dorado, how he looked like their god, their prophesied god that would return.
So when you think about it, 1400s, there's I think he's Portuguese guy travels down the Amazon, says he sees huge bustling cities with millions of people. Millions. 100 years later, when they come back, it's just a jungle. So clearly he was full of shit.
And now they're finding those cities.
Well, they're finding him, and what they think happened is when he came through with his...
Smallpox.
Yes, he killed everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Inadvertently, he didn't know, because they didn't know what the hell smallpox was, really.
Right.
Or how to transfer it. They understood what it was, sort of. But all these people just died off. And the jungle takes everything and covers it pretty damn
I was
fast.
about to say, I think we've talked. I don't know if we've talked about this, but we've talked about that if ever there is a apocalypse that wipes the earth of all the people. I think what they said within 60 years, the earth will have regrown over everything at that point.
So when you think about the Younger Dryas period in North America, 12,800 to 11,300 years ago or whatever, North America was covered under an ice sheet that's 1.5 miles thick. Imagine there were cities before that ice sheet.
Yeah.
What are they after? They're ground to dust.
Right.
And I mean, absolutely
And it doesn't, it's not
gone.
like where you think it's going to take thousands of years, but I mean, we saw it with COVID. How fast were
Everything.
things were just coming back
Right.
Earth.
Like when you hear about the inexorable tide, that's the ice flowing. There's no stopping it. There's no getting away from it. It just grinds
And imagine
everything to dust.
I mean, so when you look at the Badlands, that was made by moving glaciers, and it moved boulders that are 700,000 tons in the ice. Just moved them like
Just
they were
roll 'em.
nothing.
Yeah.
Imagine that rolling over right now, where we live. There's nothing that's left standing. It's all just flat land after that. All the concrete, all the buildings, they're all gone.
And since it's removing topsoil as well, it is literally all gone.
Yeah, it just grinds it out until it melts and floods out into the ocean, and then
That's
it's gone.
And then it's gone.
It eventually breaks down into nothing.
And then maybe, 1,000 years from now, somebody finds something from here over there and be like, oh my God, maybe they got here. You just don't know.
Have no idea.
You don't know.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying a lot of this stuff doesn't exist. I just don't know. And it's older and harder to track than you might think.
Yeah.
For someone who does a lot of tracking of Civil War stuff, it's hard to run this stuff down when you have written evidence of where it happened.
And it's only been what, 160 years?
170 years.
170 years. Well written.
Yeah.
not very far out.
I have maps
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
that are impossible to follow
so
now.
imagine something that we know a ton about, and you still have questions about things that were thousands of years ago.
That
And
people are trying to hide.
Yeah.
That's why when you research, you have the idea, the theory, and then the proof. Because you need 3 pieces of things.
Yeah.
To prove it.
Yeah. That's why it's like, we found this tablet from the Vikings. Oh, but here's a Viking ship in Lake Michigan. And then, there was something else, like stories from the
that's
natives.
why they always say a theory is always just a theory, because it's never a hard proven truth.
Well, they find like those weird graves that have like Viking, like pre like Viking writing on them in the middle of like Appalachia. And they're like, there's no way they got here. This is all a fake. I'm like, okay, I'll grant you that it's possible that this isn't real. But what Appalachian guy is coming out here and carving pre-Viking writing runes onto what is obviously a gravestone that is weathered for at least 1,000 years.
Well, and they say that, but the water used to come way up in Georgia.
Yeah.
Like Florida was under, Georgia was half submerged.
Yeah, all the way up to about Macon.
Yeah.
Again, once you get
So
south of Macon, it's just
when you
sand.
think those boats came up there, so it makes sense that in the Appalachian, maybe they went in a little bit.
Well, that, and again, we're thinking of Viking history as, again, the Middle Ages, 12, 13, 14, 1500s.
They existed well before that. Like their prominent era was in that 12, 13, 14, 15, or not 15, but you know what I mean? Like in that 1200s era.
Well, what happened 200,000 years ago? We know they were humans, so we know they were modern humans. Did they just not travel? Probably not.
No,
they probably got around.
Yeah.
We just don't know. And again, our records, it's hard to prove these things because basically if it's not fossilized,
we don't have any information about it.
it's really tough. And again, ships and organic debris don't fossilize really easily, especially in warmer conditions. They just deteriorate. You need pretty specific conditions for these things to exist.
That's a great point, because think about it. If anything came toward warmer weather like what we have, it's probably non-existent anymore. Hell, what they said, to put this in perspective, I think what they said by 2060, the Titanic will be gone.
And it's under cold water.
It's under cold water. That's 150 years. It's just going to be gone. It's just going to be a memory.
And if that guy hadn't have actively looked for it for decades,
we would have never known where it was.
So, and we knew it went down, but it would have eventually just become a legend.
So anything that we find that we can date, I mean, that's great. But at the same time,
it's a miracle. It's not great. It's a miracle.
But at the same time, like, we don't know what was here if it's just not there anymore.
And that's why these pyramids and the Sphinx are so just wow, because they are still here.
Yeah.
And especially the one that's right off the coast, well, not right off the coast of Florida, but just out from it. And it's still a working mechanism that takes in salt water, does something, and pushes it out. What is it doing? The pyramid that lights up, once, like, what is it signaling? What are you doing?
When you look at all these ancient things, like Göbekli Tepe, which is I think it's in Turkey, it's an ancient civilization that existed before we thought civilization existed. We thought everybody was still hunter-gathering, and they had a town, basically.
They had civilization.
That they buried on purpose. We know they buried it on purpose because they put all their stuff in it and covered it with dirt. We don't know why. But, like, again, I think all of this goes back way further than we think.
So it's not, I mean, and that's true. That's why it is very possible the Ark is just somewhere.
I think there's people that guard it.
Yeah.
That's my belief. The reason it hasn't been actually found is because no one's allowed to find it. I think there are people that if you get close, probably doesn't end well for you, or they throw you off, or whatever. But I think it is. You
to it. It's like a mimic, a chess mimic.
Yeah, it's just so powerful. No human being should be allowed to touch it or have it, and I'm okay with that.
I'm good with it. Yeah. I don't need it.
I'd love to find it.
Yeah,
but I don't want it.
Yeah. Well, we said it last week. The people who do want to find it probably have
don't
more ill.
Need it.
Yeah, they don't need it. There's an ill intent behind it. The people who do find it but don't need it or don't want to do anything with it, those are the people who probably need to have it.
Those are the people that probably guard it.
Yeah.
Again, I think the people that understand exactly what it is and how powerful it is are the reason why it hasn't been found.
Yeah. Well,
guys, share your theories with us.
Yeah, let us know.
Not too crazy.
Not too crazy?
Yeah, not too crazy.
Well, that was it's a lot of knowledge we imparted.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's fun to talk about stuff like this. I mean, like there's just all these different things that we just don't know what happened to them.
Well, it's cool because there's a history to it
Right.
that just ends
And it's
at
done.
the
Right.
Temple of Solomon.
ends. Yeah.
And there's a lot of theories, but none of them are. You don't know if any of them are true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
like
just
a
fun.
puzzle.
Again, I tend to believe it existed. I don't know if it was actually the voice of God,
Yeah,
but I believe they built this.
But they
thing.
built it.
Yeah.
I believe it was a physical object that existed on the planet Earth, and I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah.
And nobody does. That's the fun part.
Well, guys,
Yep.
hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Don't forget to love each other.
Love y'all.